Back to Miller. Oh, my goodness.
Herbert, sidearm sling, and it's a touchdown.
Tyrese Maxey.
Oh, good spin move by Filipowski for the news. Give him 9.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pick Swap Media. This is your host, Ryan Coyle, as always, ready to dominate another episode today as part of our NFL Divisional Preview Series. We will be on our third-place team in the NFC North today, with the Detroit Lions being in first and the Minnesota Vikings being in second. Make sure to go tap into those episodes as well. But today we'll be getting into my third-place team, and this is a team that, if you've been listening to the podcast for a few years now, you know that I've kind of been a noted hater of and a real denier of them. A couple years back, they made the playoffs. I don't know how. Probably the least talented playoff team I've ever seen. And then last year, going into the season, their win total was 6.5. They wound up going 3-14. That was my exact projection. They got the number one overall pick in the draft, and I nailed that one. I was proud of that one. Give myself a good pat on the back for that. They eventually traded down to the number 9 pick or number 10 pick, I believe it was, with the Panthers. But we're talking about the Chicago Bears, the worst team in the NFL last year. I'm seeing a real revival from them this year. Still not going to be a playoff team. I have the Bears this year going 8-9, 3-3 in the division. That's good enough for 9th in the NFC. So the second to last team out of the playoffs, I guess you could say. But this is a Chicago Bears team that I think is certainly trending upwards, and it all starts with the young quarterback with Justin Fields. We'll get into the entire offense, defense, coach, games to look at on the schedule, and breakout player throughout this episode. But this is a team I see making a pretty significant jump from year 1 to year 2 under Matt Eberflus. As I said, a 3-14 record last year. My projection at the beginning of the season, that's exactly what they did. But I'm certainly more optimistic heading into 2023. Their win total on the Vegas markets right now is 7.5, and I have them getting 8 wins. So I just have them hitting the over there. And I certainly think, as I've said a couple times now, this team is headed in the right direction, and I think they could be a year away from potentially being a playoff team. So we'll get into the offense first. They're led by one of the more electric players in the NFL right now, and that's young quarterback Justin Fields going into year 3. Is his style of play at the quarterback spot sustainable for long-term NFL success? I think we'll need to see some changes in his game, because I'm a little pessimistic about him potentially staying healthy and being there for a whole season. He missed 2 games last year due to injury, but he still ran for 1,143 yards and 8 touchdowns as a quarterback. Let me say that again, 1,143 rushing yards and 8 rushing touchdowns as a quarterback on 160 carries. That was the 35th most carries in the league, though, and the second most for quarterbacks behind Jalen Hurts. But while Jalen Hurts runs a lot, he only had 5 more carries than Justin Fields, but a lot of those runs were quarterback sneaks. Justin Fields' carries were he was the main weapon in the running game, and big-time open field runner, a lot of, design quarterback runs for him to get him on the move, and he was a really electric runner and had some big-time runs last year. But we've talked so much already about Justin Fields, and I haven't even mentioned him throwing the ball yet. So this is a guy that's certainly a run-first player right now. Let's see year 3, his second full year as a starter. Can he be more of a complete thrower? Make that Jalen Hurts-type leap that we saw last year, where he's such a good dual threat, but really is beating you with his arm more than his legs. But he will use his legs when he needs to. That's what we want to see out of Justin Fields this year. Very good open field runner, as we talked about. And just in terms of throwing the ball, he is a pretty gifted thrower. But from year 1, when he played sparingly, he made a few starts. He only had 7 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Last year, he made a pretty nice jump to 17 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. But he does need to take better care of the ball. Only played in 15 games, I believe. But he does have a much more improved, complete offense, I think, around him this year. And I think it's pretty in the realm that he can have this big year 3 and take a huge leap this year. And I think it's kind of worth taking a stab at a wager of him for MVP this year at plus 2,000. Not out of the realm of possibilities at all, but the Bears do need some more team success, and I'm a little bit concerned about that, because I don't think this is a playoff team quite yet. But if Justin Fields leads this team to an 11-6, 12-5 record, competing for the 2nd or 3rd seed in the NFC, he certainly could be up there in the the MVP contention. So don't be afraid to throw a little $10 bet on him to win the MVP at plus 2,000. I think that's in the realm of possibilities for this year. The main concern, though, I had about this team going into last year, and it really came true, was the offensive line up in front of Justin Fields. He got sacked 55 times last year, was a league high, and he missed those 2 games. The offensive line, though, the offensive line now is improved. They went out and got Darnell Wright out of Tennessee, my favorite offensive tackle in the draft. He's going to slide right in there at right tackle to start right away, and I think he's a very good building block up on the offensive line up front. Braxton Jones proved to be a pretty good left tackle last year, and then Tevin Jenkins has looked like a pretty nice guard. So that left side is pretty well put together now. Cody Whitehair, a pretty reliable center, and then they went out and got Nate Davis from Tennessee, I believe, at guard. So this is an improved offensive line. I think it should be a pretty average group, probably between like 14 and 18 is probably where I would rank them in the league. But anything can be better than last year, and just keeping Justin Fields healthy and giving him a chance to develop more as a passer and beat teams from the pocket is really what he needs to do to kind of take his game to the next level. And that starts up front with that offensive line helping him out. So, and Fields' pass catchers are the best they've been since he's been there. They went out and acquired DJ Moore as part of that package for the #1 overall pick, where the Bears moved down with the Panthers so they could trade up to select Bryce Young. DJ Moore, he's a legit #1 wide receiver. He's not one of those elite guys, but he can be a #1 guy for a team. He's gone over 1,000 yards in 3 out of his 5 seasons, and he's had below average quarterback play pretty much each and every year. So I think he's in for a big year with Justin Fields. Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool are 2 very nice complementary receivers as well, forming a pretty nice trio. Certainly the best that Justin Fields has had to work with yet. And then Cole Kmet is a pretty nice emerging tight end in his own regard. He just got a contract extension showing the team's belief in him. The running back room is an interesting case, though. We look at Justin Fields, and as we talked about with his 1,143 rushing yards and 8 rushing touchdowns last year, he's certainly going to be a key part of that running game. But they did lose David Montgomery in free agency to the rival Detroit Lions, and they're going to turn to Khalil Herbert as their RB1 now. Khalil Herbert last year averaged 5.7 yards per carry. That was first among running backs and 5th in the entire league behind 4 quarterbacks. Justin Fields was actually first in the league last year with the 7.1 yard per carry average last year. So this is a running game that's pretty dynamic, and they got guys that are explosive with the ball in their hands. So watch out for the Chicago Bears to have one of the better running games in the NFL this year. And I think this running game is also going to be benefited by the addition of, I believe it was 3rd-round pick out of Texas, Roschon Johnson. He was playing kind of that backseat role the past few years to Bijan Robinson. This is a guy, if he was on probably 90% of other teams, he would have been maybe like a 1st or 2nd-round pick. That's how talented he apparently is. So look for the Bears to give him a lot of chances. I believe he's more of kind of a downhill, hard-hitting runner, and Khalil Herbert's more of that explosive guy. So look for those 2 guys as well as Fields to make a really nice running game. This rushing offense should be very good, and it's going to open up expand the passing game as well. So I'm excited to see, and I'm optimistic about this Bears offense this year after being really down on them the past few years just because of that offensive line and the lack of pass catchers. But then we turn to the defensive side of the ball, and I think this is what's going to be the demise of this team. When you think of the Chicago Bears, your mind should immediately go to defense in that 85 Bears unit. But throughout their history, they've been known as one of the better defensive franchises in the NFL. But not really with this team. I don't think they have really a true blue chip guy or a game-changing type talent on the side of the ball. Potentially cornerback Jalen Johnson. He's a nice young player, but I wouldn't put him up in that elite, tier right yet. In 2022, the Chicago Bears finished dead last in the league in sacks, only having 20. In comparison, the Philadelphia Eagles led the league in sacks and had the 2nd most ever in NFL history in one season with 70 sacks. So they were only behind, actually, the 84 Chicago Bears, the Eagles, last year. So this defense has a long way to go. Only 20 sacks last year, 50 less than the league leader. So, and it really starts up front on this defense. They don't really have much up there. Starting front 4 on the depth chart is DeMarcus Walker, Andrew Billings, Justin Jones, and Trevis Gibson. This isn't a group that's going to be keeping offensive coordinators and opposing teams up at night. The middle of the defense, though, they did spend a lot of money in this area in free agency at the linebacker spot, acquiring TJ Edwards from Philadelphia and Tremaine Edmonds from the Bills. So those 2 guys in the middle have been pretty solid players in their own regard since coming into the league. They should hold it down in the middle and kind of be a solidifying force for that team. But they're going to be active, I think, with this defensive line that I don't think is a very good unit. These guys are going to have to be on top of their game and really stop some of the running game from breaking off big runs and gashing plays. So then you look at the secondary. As we talked about, Jalen Johnson is one of the better young corners in the NFL out of Utah a few years back. Look for him to continue to grow. He's the strongest part of this defense. And then rookie 2nd-round pick out of Miami, Tyreek Stevenson, is going to be counted on, it looks like, to start opposite of Jalen Johnson at corner. And then Kyler Gordon in the nickel after having a pretty solid rookie year. I believe he was out of Washington. He's back for year 2. So this is a pretty solid secondary here, but a lot of young guys, which I kind of like. This is a group that's going to grow together and hopefully under defensive coach Matt Eberflus get better together. The safety duo of Jaquan Brisker and Eddie Jackson is another strong duo. Eddie Jackson, after being a Pro Bowl, All-Pro type guy earlier in his career, has kind of fell off a bit. He's got to pick up his game to help elevate this defense. But Jaquan Brisker is a really nice young safety. A lot of young players on this defensive unit, so I think this is a group that has some potential to grow. But I'm very worried about the pass rush up front, as we talked about last year, only having 20 sacks. This is a team that certainly needs to improve, and they might have to get creative on defense to cause some pressure. Coach grade, I'm going to give Matt Eberflus a C-. I wasn't a fan of the hire coming in. He was a guy that was really hyped up like the past few years in the coaching cycle, former defensive coordinator with the Colts, but I never really saw it with him. The Colts were always just a solid team. It's not like he was crafting up these mastermind defensive plays or these mastermind units, and I just wasn't really a big fan of the hire. And then he goes 3-14 in year 1. He's supposed to be a defensive-minded coach. And while they don't have much talent to begin with on that side of the ball, he should be able to help improve this unit with his defensive acumen, so to say. They allowed the second most yards per play last year per game, and then they also allowed the most points per game in the league with 27.2. And then as we talked about, they only had 20 sacks the entire season. That's like a little above 1 sack per game. This was a embarrassing defensive unit last year, and they need to take a major leap in year 2. If we see another season where this team's 5-12, 4-13, that range, Matt Eberflus, I don't think will survive to year 3. So look for a big prove it year out of Matt Eberflus if he wants to be that coach. If this team goes from 3 wins to 8 wins, certainly building in the right direction. If this defense goes from 20 sacks to maybe say 31, 32 sacks, I think that would be a nice improvement. The defense goes from 27.2 points per game down to about 23, 24 points per game. Let's just see some steady improvement on both sides of the ball, and I think his job will be safe. But big prove-it year in my book for Matt Eberflus. My breakout player, a team that has a lot of young guys that you could pick from, and you could say he broke out kind of last year, but I think my pick here has to be Justin Fields, as he's getting this MVP buzz. You may say that he broke out last year, but this year I think is when he can really put it all together, and we see that he's not just a running back at the quarterback spot. We see how talented he can be at times when throwing the football with an improved offensive line in front of him, as well as, a full offseason with Chase Claypool and Darnell Mooney, and then going out and getting DJ Moore as well and Cole Kmet in the pass-catching lineup too. So Justin Fields, I think dark horse MVP pick at plus 2,000. It sounds like he's getting a lot of buzz on the betting market with that as well, but an improved offensive line is a great start. His running game is certainly going to be there if he's able to stay healthy. And then spraying the ball to these newfound weapons in this offense as well. I think Justin Fields is in for a big year, and if he's not in the MVP, top 1 or 2, I certainly think he's going to be a guy in the top 5. I think he's in for a big year, and as well as he plays, as well as as far as the Bears are going to go. Don't rule out a Jalen Hurts type leap. I'm not saying division winner, number 1 seed, going to the Super Bowl type leap, but all right, we're in a legit conversation by the end of the year that Justin Fields is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I would not be surprised at all. And then lastly, 2 games to watch for the Chicago Bears team. We're going to go week 1 at home versus Green Bay. It's a prime, like a 4:25 game in the afternoon. It's a tone setter for the season. You got the big bad Green Bay Packers who have ruled this division for so many years. No longer have Aaron Rodgers. It's a new look team for them as well. And a potential, long-term duel at the quarterback spot, a rivalry between Jordan Love and Justin Fields potentially brewing. I think that's a big game to kind of set the tone for your season at home. And then another game, week 9 at the Saints. I think these 2 teams are going to be competing for these, 8-9, 9-8, 10-7 type records, where these teams are going to be competing for playoff spots, wild card spots. And that game could be an eventual tiebreaker or something down the line between those 2. So week 9 at the Saints, I think that could eventually be a big game, win or loss for either team, determining whether or not they get into the playoffs this upcoming season. So that's my thoughts on the Chicago Bears this year, after being a noted hater of them on the podcast the past few years and always finding a way to pick against them. I'm believing in them a little bit this year, and I think Justin Fields is going to take a big leap this season. So that'll do it for this episode of the Beef Up Front podcast. Obviously, our last place team in the NFC North will be the Green Bay Packers. Very surprising. I don't think they finished in last place since all the way back in 2005. So make sure to tune in to our next episode to hear why I think they're going to have a poor season coming up. But as always, everyone, thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, and we'll talk soon.